Hello, my name is Roland Reyer. I'm a technical specialist for Maya at Autodesk Media Entertainment in Europe. In this session, I would like to show you some of the new features around BlendShapes and Pose-Based Deformers in Maya 2016 Extension 2. I have loaded a model that comes from the game The Witcher. This is a relatively low resolution model that I've chosen for the sake of performance here in this presentation. I am about to set up a facial rig for this character. So let me show the joints here. There's a little skeleton inside the head. The eyes are attached to the skeleton and the skin face is already skinned to the skeleton. So when I choose the jawbone, for example, and rotate the jawbone open, you see that the mouth is opening. So this kind of stuff is already done. Then some other things that I've done already are around the eyes. Let me select this, hitting Control 1. So the eyes in this example have a special setup. I've made it so that each of the eyes has an orient constraint that I can switch between some eye direction that is chosen with a locator that sits in the center of this eye here, and an aim constraint that is making this eye look at the camera. So there are actually two constraints or two directions for this eye here. And I can choose between the weights between these two different constraints are driven with this attribute here. So I can make the eyes look at the viewer. So whenever I change my camera view, the eyes will be focusing the camera. And then when I set this attribute to 0, the eye is going to look in another direction. And while I have this object here, this selection handle selected, I can also go into the rotate mode and rotate the eyes around, or the eyes will follow this locator that sits in the left eye of the character. That makes it easy for me to control the eyes. So many things, when the character looks at the viewer, are very simple to do. So let's switch back on the rest of the character here. You will also see when I'm moving the eyes around, so while I have this object here selected, I can also do this, make the eyes look up and down, and you see that the face or the skin of the character, the eyelids, are moving together with the eyes. This is made possible by two clusters. So there's a cluster for the upper lids, for both upper lids, and a cluster for both lower lids. When I switch the controls on here, you will see the clusters. So here we see the clusters. Let me pick one. And you see I have to pick through the skin, and so it makes that makes it difficult for me to get to this cluster here. So when I rotate this cluster, you see that only the lower lids are affected, and accordingly the other cluster is the upper lips. And with this, we already see one of the big problems with a setup like this, or any kind of complex rig that we have with a character. It gets more and more complicated to actually access the control objects in the character. So what we can do is, of course, bundle the channels like I did here with the locator beside the eyes. So I'm creating new channels, and I'm driving with these channels. I'm driving some of the aspects here, for example, the rotation of the clusters, or the look at for the eyes, so the weighting of the different constraints for the eyeballs. But the whole setup becomes more and more complicated, and that's why I have chosen to build a custom user interface here. When I hit spacebar, you see what I've built already. It's a custom user interface using Attribute Collection 2.07. Attribute Collection lets you select things in the channel box, and then you can add these channels to your custom user interface by simple right mouse button somewhere and say, I want to insert my selected attributes at this location here. So it's pretty easy to build yourself a custom user interface that has custom buttons, for example, for the jawbone, to have a reset functionality so that you don't have to enter zeros in all of these channels. So we have some things set up already. So for example, I have this jaw rotation that has limits so that I can't overdo it. Of course, I can edit all of these channels, right mouse button on it. So for each of these items here, you have such an edit box where you can, for a slider, set the min and max values, the name of everything, and so on. So, and of course I have a slider here to for the weights of the constraints for the eyes. I can also make myself buttons that, for instance, toggle things between 0 and 1. That's very easy. That keyframe certain aspects of the character, or select things. So, for example, I want to select the look at, and I want to move the eye around, and you see how the eyelids are always around the eye. So let me reset that and leave the tool and unselect it. So at this stage of my setup, I would like to add more things to the face. So for the face here, I would like to add more blend shapes that do some facial expression, for example, or make some corrections. And for this, I will now toggle some of the decoration around the character off. So the hair, for example, gets toggled off, and also the whole environment, the background for this scene. So let's say when I open the mouth of the character, you see that it looks a little bit dull here because the jaw or the lower part of the skin is simply rotated open, but there's not the impression that this skin here gets actually stretched. Normally, you know, it should scale in a little bit, become thinner, the cheeks become thinner, and everything is stretched and so on. So we need to create this somehow. And one or a perfect way in Maya 2016 extension 2 is to use not only the BlendShape editor, which is very cool to use in a situation like this, but also the Pose Space Deformers. So the Pose editor here allows me to make a deformation of the skin depending on the position of such a bone. So we have one BlendShape here already that's actually the eyelids BlendShape. Maybe I rename it eyelids BlendShape, like so. And for the coming steps here, I'm going to switch this off momentarily. So at the moment, the eyelids won't work as long as I have switched this on. I'm going to add the new BlendShape or the corrective BlendShape to this BlendShape node here. So for the pose interpolator, I will select a bone and then say create a pose interpolator. This is this one here, and these three get added to make the neutral pose. So for the neutral pose, we already have these values here, the weight values, and when it's in a neutral pose, it's gonna, set this to 1 later. And then I say, okay, for the pose with an open mouth, with the maximum that I would allow, I make another pose here, and I'll attach it to this BlendShape deformer, so that it's another channel, another part of this BlendShape deformer. This is a special kind of BlendShape that gets created. It's automatically driven by the rotation of the jawbone. So you see down here, the values are automatically interpolated between 0 and 1 to blend this new BlendShape in when the maximum for the rotation is reached. And that's very cool, especially in a situation like this, where I don't want to add extra driven keys to make this this deformation of the cheeks. I just want it to happen together with this bone. Perfect situation here. So what I can do now, I can actually hide the joints at the moment. So what I want to do here is 2 things. First, I have this little bit crippled geometry here in the corners of the mouth. I want to correct this. I can do that while the red edit button is on. I can correct now the shape. So let me switch off the mirroring, maybe make the brush a little bit smaller, and then just correct these few vertices in the corner of the mouth a little bit. That's it already. And then I would make a bigger brush, switch on my symmetry again, would make a bigger brush and use the grab geometry tool. Scale it bigger here. Use the grab geometry to then grab the cheeks completely, move them in, and do something with all the lips up to the nose. Even the nose should be moved very, very slightly. And I don't have to do something. I don't have to leave the tool to test it. I can simply use my slider here because the relation between the BlendShape and this jawbone rotation is already there. So while I'm in the tool, while I'm doing this, I can already try it out. You see, looks much better now. So I can actually leave the tool, Sometimes it happens that, you know, these vertex colors or these face colors get switched on. So in the color set, simply go to another color set to remove these colors. Okay, again, we can try it out. I can switch off the edit now, in either of the windows, switch off the edit button. And now I can say, okay, this is now the new thing that happens when I open the jaw. And this was what it looked like before. So this was before. And when I switch it back on, this is what it's doing now. Looks much more natural. Maybe here in the center there's too much scaling, but for the moment I'm fine with it. So it's a much more natural behavior for the mouth of the character. And as you can see, all the values get interpolated automatically together with this Pose-Based Deformer. And that is a fantastic thing for all riggers, because when you have problems with deformations on the arms, on the knees, somewhere, then you can easily take this mechanism or this new feature here, correct your shape in the pose when you see the problem, and it will do all the interpolation automatically for you. So with this, I can close the Pose Space Deformer window and switch back on the eyelid blend shape that was in the background all the time. And we're gonna add some more. So with this object here, or actually not with the object selected, with the blend shape selected, I could say, now I want to add another target, maybe for the eyebrows, for example. So add a target here. It's on edit automatically, so I don't need to do anything. And just say, while it's on edit, I pick the skin here, take my grab tool, maybe in this case, switch off the symmetry again. And I say I want to make him look angry with the eyebrow. So grab the eyebrow, pull it in a little bit, lower everything, and even, pull it out ever so slightly. So, and also the skin of the forehead. And the problem, I can play around with it with the slider within the shape editor already. So that's some sort of a custom user interface that I can use. And you see, unfortunately, I also grabbed the eyelids, and I don't want to affect the eyelids because I get overlaid effects here that I don't want. So I either have to do it again because my brush was too big, or I can use this new feature here, which is the erase tool for the paint or for the deformations of a blend shape. The erase tool now lets me erase whatever I've done. So I simply go to erase, make my brush smaller, and then I can just paint erase everything from the lower eyelid, maybe up to here. So the sides, the nose, I don't want to affect too much. And also, my upper eyelid. So maybe I'll reduce the effect a little bit, make my brush smaller, like so. And then, draw over the eyelid, and maybe even and you see, it's really hard to just reach those points that I want to affect or want to remove, but it doesn't matter. I make a little bit more, and then I can, for instance, maybe make the brush a bit larger. I hold my shift key. You see that the circle lights up to show that while I'm holding my shift key, I'm in the smooth mode. So I'm simply smoothing the fact, I'm smoothing the deformation that I've painted on my blend shape target. So that is a very cool thing. In the past, you would have to edit the thing until nothing else moves anymore. And here you can really paint interactively on the deformation of your blend shape target. And while you're still in the tool, you can still play around with it and test it out. Actually, I'm instead of smoothing here, I wanted to smooth it. So I have to hold, of course, my shift key to smooth all of these points. So that's very cool. When I like that, I can leave it there. Okay, that's my angry eyebrow thing here. I've done it only on one side because I want to have a separate control for both of the eyebrows. So let's switch off the edit here and leave the tool. So what do I do with the other side? Well, that's very easy. I can right mouse button on this one here. So this is the left side of my character. So I would name this round left because maybe I want to raise the eyebrows also. And now I can right mouse button on this shape and duplicate the target. So we get a duplicate transform. Both targets are now set to 1, but I can also say, okay, I want to call this now frown on the right. And in my pop-up menu, maybe you've seen it already, we have a flip target. So I can flip it to the other side. Now I have a frown slider for both sides, which is cool. But I always, when I want to do this, I always have to move 2 sliders here. Not a big problem. I can actually, I can take these 2 sliders here and make a new group. And I call this group here maybe I call it frown group or something. Frown group. Okay, so and with the frown group, I have a slider that can move both of these targets. So when this is 100%, I can, release one of the eyebrows or the other eyebrow to adjust them separately. But this way I have control for both eyebrows. So that is a very cool way to get this done here. And you see, I'm not fiddling around with separate geometries or so. I'm just doing it directly on the face of this character. And it's very easy to play around with the stuff and even to go back in and edit it. So if I don't like it, I can still go edit it. And of course, I would have to see it. And for example, remove things and smoothen it out so that it fits my needs. Okay, with that done, we can add more things. So for example, for this BlendShape, I would add a target for, let's say, some expressions for the mouth here. So let's call it, this is the O shape, for example. Okay. So I would go in and open the mouth. And this is the trouble here. The O shape is actually a combination of the mouth a little bit open and some blend shape. So we can have them separate. We can steer them separate. But to create this is really difficult if you don't have this editor here. So I'll go back into my edit mode and use my grab brush. Maybe switch on the symmetry again and make the brush a bit bigger. Like so, and then start to model something like an O shape. So an O shape, for example, comes out a little bit. So we can hold the control key to rotate the lips a little bit more, like so. I want to rotate it, and of course, rotate it out. So this is a bit ridiculous. Make some sort of a round shape, and you can always, is this an O? You can always play around with it while the tool is live. So I have now the O shape. So this is what it would look like without the jaw opened. So maybe this is an O shape already. I'm not too happy with it, but yeah, for the moment we'll do it. So you understand the principle of this whole thing. I'm playing around on the tool while I'm in edit mode, so it's easy for me to see the results before I hit save or something like that. So that has become so much easier these days. So you see, with these groups here, we can actually have separate attributes grouped together and steer them all at once. Or we have single attributes here. I could, of course, also make a relation to the jawbone here. So when I open the O slider, the jawbone or the jaw gets automatically opened. But it's much better because I can make something like a very small mouth and have something like this. Maybe even a V sound like this one here is possible with the same blend shape. And becomes more and more. Many of these shapes are, of course, on the skin of the character. So here in the blend shape, you will find the attributes that you want to later add to attribute collection to have your separate channels. And we will do that in a second. So that's the basic workflow. Now let's have a look at the final thing. So I'm going to switch back on the whole decoration of the scene. and maybe switch this one here off and switch this one here on. So this is a character, or this is the same character, and I have a different user interface here. So in the second tab, I have the user interface for this character. So here's the open the jawbone. Oh, you see, I forgot to attach the beard. So what happens with the beard? The beard is really easy. I'd select the beard and I select the face and I make a simple wrap deformer. And that is so easy, and suddenly the whole geometry of the beard is attached to the skin, and this everything works fine with the default value. So I have this jawbone here, and you see I've switched on the teeth inside. There's no shadows at the moment. That's why it's too bright inside the mouth. So I have this one here. Can open that. Then you see I've added a bunch of icons for ready-made poses. So for example, I have a left and right snarl here for the character. I can use them even both, so both BlendShapes together would work, and then I can open and close the mouse to make him talk. And you see he even looks aggressive, even though I've not even used the frown. This is the frown here. And I can reset all of these channels at once with my reset all button here. That's a button row, this attribute that allows you to set several buttons with mel commands that will be saved together with the scene. So next time you save your scene, all of this user interface will be saved together with the scene. And I'm particularly proud about this one here, the toggle look at, where the character looks into the camera with the eyelids automatically always surrounding the iris of the eyes, so that you can make a frown character and make him, do this kind of thing here and always look at the camera. And then when you want him to look somewhere else, you just pick this object here and define which other direction you want him to look. So anything works fine. I've made a button row here to create keyframes for a complete blinking operation and stuff like that. So all of that comes with a custom user interface and gets saved together with the scene. So let me reset it here and reset also the eyes. So this is the new BlendShape editor and the Pose Space Deformer editor in Maya 2016 extension 2.